My name is Rachel Porter. I'm 34 years old and work as a librarian in Hollow Ridge, a quiet Vermont town where the snow arrives early and stays late. For most of the past year, I lived in the house where I was raised, a white two-story colonial tucked behind a line of maples. It's the kind of place where silence settles easily, especially now that my father is gone. He died 3 weeks ago just before dawn with the frost still on the windows. Pancreatic cancer. I was the one who made his soup, measured his medications, helped him in and out of bed when the pain got too bad to pretend it wasn't there. I stayed when it got hard. I stayed when his memory began to blur, and the weight in the room grew so heavy I had to step outside just to breathe. My sister Brooke did not stay. She called 3 times over the course of the entire year, sent flowers once, a bright arrangement delivered with a pre-written card that read, "Wishing you strength." I don't blame her for living her life, but I haven't forgotten that she didn't offer to help carry his. The funeral passed like a quiet snowfall, muted, slow, too brief. Brooke arrived just before the service began, hair styled in waves, coat thrown over her shoulders like something from a magazine. She hugged our mother without meeting her eyes. When she looked at me, it was like we were strangers sitting in adjacent pews. No acknowledgement, just the faint scent of perfume and exhaustion. 3 days later, we sat in the living room waiting for Mr. Halbrook, the family attorney, the same man who handled the papers when Dad sold his construction business 10 years ago. My mother made tea and placed the cups on the coffee table, though no one touched them. The fireplace was unlit. Brooke scrolled through her phone. I stared at Dad's empty armchair and tried not to cry. When Mr. Halbrook arrived, he was gentle but efficient. He opened his folder and read the will with the kind of voice that knows how to deliver news without emotion. The main house, he said, would be transferred in full to Brooke. The joint savings, the investment accounts, the land deed also to Brooke. There was a pause. Then he added that the garden cottage and the rear lot would go to me. I didn't speak. I didn't know how to speak. Brooke did. She laughed, light dismissive. You mean the shed? She said, raising her eyebrows. Well, I guess everyone gets something. She glanced at me then with a smirk, as if expecting gratitude or apology. I kept my face still. My heart wasn't broken exactly. It was something quieter, like watching a photograph fade in the sun. I didn't care about the house or the money, but I had cared for him, and I suppose some part of me thought that counted for more. My mother didn't meet my eyes. She stood and left the room, returning moments later with a small object in her hand. She placed it in my palm without speaking. A key, cold and old, the metal darkened with rust. I looked at it confused. The garden house, she said he wanted you to have it. No explanation, no words to soften the blow, just the press of metal and a room full of quiet. That evening, I sat by the front window of the main house, watching the snow begin to fall. Thin white flakes drifted past the glass landing softly on the porch railing and the trees. The wind moved through the branches like it was carrying something unfinished. I thought about the year I had spent by Dad's side, the stories he told when the pain meds dulled his body just enough to let his voice wander. One night in particular, when the wind rattled the shutters and the power had flickered, he had looked at me and said, "Look where no one else will." I hadn't known what he meant. I'd nodded, thinking it was the fog of illness talking. But now I wasn't sure. The garden cottage sits behind the house, just beyond the old birch trees. As kids, Brooke and I used to call it the playhouse, though I remember Dad spending more time there than we ever did. It's small, with wood siding that's warped from years of rain and snow. One window is cracked, patched with a strip of clear tape. Moss grows along the stone steps. I had passed it 100 times this past year, too busy inside with medicine charts and meal trays to notice its shape changing in the weather. Now it was mine. I stood from the window seat and stepped into the cold. The snow had coated the walkway in a thin crust. My boots made soft, crunching sounds as I moved across the yard. I stopped at the top of the hill where the path veers behind the trees. The cottage was there, dimly lit by the fading sky, its roof heavy with white. The key was in my pocket. I pulled it out and held it in my palm. It felt heavier now than it had earlier, not just old, but full of something. A question. A memory. I stared at the cottage for a long time. There were no lights on inside, no footsteps in the snow, just the sound of wind and the distant whistle of the train that passed the edge of town every evening at 6:30. I didn't move forward. Not yet. I stood there, the key in my hand, the snow falling lightly around me, and wondered what he had really left behind. Not on paper, not in a signature, but in this place everyone had forgotten. I wasn't angry. Not exactly, just suspended in something unspoken, a kind of stillness that waits for you to notice it. And now it was time to find out why. I used to believe family meant fairness, or at least something close to it. But if I'm honest, I started noticing the tilt early on, long before adulthood, long before illness and hospital beds. The scale had always tipped toward Brooke quietly, but undeniably like a table with one leg shorter than the rest. You learn to adjust to lean differently to stop expecting balance. Brooke is 3 years younger than me. As kids, she was always louder, quicker to charm, better at drawing attention and holding it. I was softer, more bookish, the kind of child who memorized the garden plant guide Dad kept by the back door. I didn't mind being quiet, but I think that made it easier for everyone not to see me at all. When Brooke turned 10, she had a birthday party with a unicorn cake and matching tiaras for her and her friends. I remember because Mom handed me the Polaroid camera and said, "Make sure you get good shots of Brooke with the cake before it melts." I wasn't invited to join the photos. I stood behind the lens while they laughed in front of it. When I tried to hand the camera off to one of the other girls so I could be in just one picture, Mom waved me away gently. "Sweetheart, just take one more." I did, but I kept the last photo for myself. It was blurry, off-centered, snapped by accident when I tripped on the edge of the porch. You can barely see Brooke in it, just the corner of her birthday dress. But I remember thinking, maybe that's all I'll ever get a glimpse at the edge of someone else's moment. By the time I reached high school, the pattern was fixed. Brooke got applause for half-finished projects and excuses when she flaked on commitments. I got quiet nods, the occasional, "We're proud of you," spoken in the same tone as someone thanking the mailman. I remember the day I graduated. It was sunny rare for early June in Vermont. I wore a pale blue dress under my gown and sat in the front row of folding chairs, hands sweating as they called names. Brooke didn't come. She had a dance recital in Boston the same day. My parents said it was unfortunate timing. "We can't be in two places at once," Dad said, patting my shoulder. He did come, though. For a while, he stayed through the ceremony, took a few photos, even handed me a wrapped book, an old edition of Jane Eyre annotated in pencil. I hadn't seen him write in the margins since I was 10, but the next morning he was gone before breakfast, a business meeting in Connecticut. Brooke had called late that night with a panic over her hotel room. He left a note on the counter. "Congratulations. So proud of you. Sorry I had to go." That was the rhythm of our family. Brooke made noise and everyone moved. I didn't. I stayed. I stayed when college decisions came, choosing a nearby school so I could keep working at the local library. I stayed when my parents downsized their business, helping with paperwork and shoveling snow from the driveway when the plows forgot our street. I stayed when Dad's memory began to skip like a scratched record and Mom didn't know what to do. That final year when the diagnosis came, there wasn't a family meeting. There was just the quiet assumption that I would be the one. I moved back into my old room, split my library shifts, and became the nurse neither of us could afford. Every week was a list of medications, appointment times reminders scribbled onto the fridge in blue ink. Brooke called on Sundays if she remembered. Most of the time she was on deadline or in between flights. Once she sent a fruit basket. Dad couldn't eat most of it, but he smiled anyway and said, "She's trying." I nodded, though I wasn't sure she was. Still, there were moments, small ones. Moments when Dad and I sat on the porch watching the sun fall behind the hills, the smell of cedar from the nearby woods drifting through the screen door. Once after a rough day at the hospital, I came home to find him asleep in the armchair, her favorite gardening gloves resting on his chest like a shield. I picked them up gently and sat beside him. That night when he woke, he whispered, "You never ask for anything. Rachel, that's what makes me trust you the most." I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing. I don't think my parents ever meant to choose her over me. Not in any grand or malicious way, but choices don't always have to be loud to be real. Sometimes they're just repetitions. The way someone always asks how one child is doing and forgets to ask the other. The way concern is extended like a blanket to one while the other is expected to already have a coat. I learned to make peace with it. Not acceptance exactly, but a kind of quiet endurance. I found comfort in things that didn't ask for praise, a well-sorted shelf of returned books, a freshly mulched garden bed, the warm quiet that filled the house after Dad finally drifted to sleep. I never raised my voice, never demanded anything. That was Brooke's domain. And maybe in some ways it worked. She was always the one who asked, so she always received. But Dad saw me. Not loudly, not with declarations or birthday speeches or teary confessions. In the margins of a book, in the patience of a garden, in the key he left behind, rusted and cold, pressed into my palm by a mother who didn't quite know what to say. It's only now, with snow blanketing the roof of the cottage and the key still heavy in my coat pocket, that I wonder what he really meant by it, what he saw, what he trusted. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to believe that the silence he left behind wasn't an absence. It was a beginning. The will is read in the living room, the same space where Dad used to sit in his armchair every Sunday morning, with the newspaper folded in his lap, and the sound of classical music playing low from the radio. Today, it's silent. The fireplace is cold. The tea Mom made has gone untouched. Mr. Halbrook clears his throat and opens the folder. The pages shift like paper blades in the stillness. He begins with the standard language, the kind that sounds both ancient and sterile. I, Thomas Porter, being of sound mind, declare this my final will and testament. My hands are folded in my lap. Brooke sits across from me, legs crossed her ankles, swinging with a kind of casual detachment that's both practiced and pointed. She's wearing a sleek black turtleneck and a faint smile. When Mr. Halbrook announces that the main house and the family's savings will go to Brooke Porter, her grin sharpens. As expected, she says under her breath, not bothering to mask it. No one stops her. I don't react. Not at first. It's like hearing something underwater slow, muffled too far away to feel real. I glance toward Mom. She's staring at the carpet, not surprised, not confused, just still. Then Mr. Halbrook adds, "The back garden cottage and adjacent lot shall be passed in full to Rachel Porter." Brooke makes a noise, half scoff, half laugh. "The shed," she says, looking at me like she's amused. Well, I suppose everyone gets something. Her words linger in the room longer than they should. Mr. Halbrook closes the folder with quiet finality, but I can feel something breaking open inside me. I don't respond. Not to her. Not to anyone. I keep my hands folded, my face unreadable. It isn't the property. It's not about square footage or account balances. It's the weight of the past year, the oxygen tanks, the slow walks to the bathroom, the way Dad used to wince and apologize as I helped him out of bed. All of it, a year of care of staying when everyone else disappeared, and this is what remains. A shed. I feel something press against my palm. I turn. Mr. Halbrook is handing me a key. It's old iron rusted along the edges, the kind that belongs to a chest buried under floorboards or behind walls. His face doesn't change, but his eyes meet mine with a flicker of understanding. "Your father left this with me," he says. "He said it was meant only for you." I nod, closing my fingers around it. Brooke stands and stretches like we've just finished a long brunch. "Let me know if you want help clearing out the place," she says, adjusting her coat. "I'm sure it's full of spiders and old furniture." Mom follows her toward the hallway, saying nothing. She doesn't look back. That night, the air is brittle with cold. I sit by the window, a blanket across my lap, watching the snow fall in slow spirals onto the back path that leads to the garden cottage. The porch light flickers, but it holds. From here, I can just barely make out the dark outline of the little house beyond the birches. Its roof is blanketed in white. I haven't stepped inside it in years. My hand drifts to the key on the table beside me. I remember one night from last spring, Dad and I were coming back from a hospital appointment, and I had pulled the car over near the lake just to give him a few minutes outside. The air had been warm, the sky flushed pink. He had leaned back in the seat and looked out at the water without saying anything for a while. Then out of nowhere he'd said, "Look where no one else will." I thought he meant something poetic, something about nature or stillness. I smiled, thinking it was a kind of metaphor he'd grown fond of using as the pain meds softened the sharpness of his thoughts. Now I wonder if it wasn't a metaphor at all. I get up and walk to the fireplace. The ashes are cold, brittle, a reminder that nothing burns forever. On the mantel is an old photo. Dad in the garden sleeves rolled up dirt on his hands. Behind him, barely visible, is the outline of the shed. I pick up the key again. There's something strange about being given so little and yet feeling that it might contain something more. Maybe it's just sentiment. Maybe it's my heart still searching for a way to make sense of the imbalance. But maybe it's something else. I walk to the back door. The porch creaks beneath my feet. I step out, boots crunching in the snow. The wind slices across my cheeks, but I don't stop. The cottage stands just beyond the edge of the light. Smaller than I remember. Its wooden panels are faded, the edges curled from weather. One of the windows is cracked, and snow has gathered on the sill like a quiet breath waiting to melt. I don't try the key yet. I just stand there holding it in my gloved hand, staring at the door. The cold settles into my bones, but I stay. Because something is pulling at me now. Not anger, not grief, but the echo of a voice. A phrase I didn't understand when it was given. "Look where no one else will." My father wasn't sentimental. He didn't leave letters or dramatic speeches, but he was deliberate. And if he left me this key, this cottage, this cold moment alone in the snow, then maybe he left something else too. I glance back at the house. It glows softly behind the curtain of snowfall filled with everything I thought I wanted: warmth, light, the illusion of fairness. But I know better now. Sometimes the truth isn't where the lights are. It's where no one is looking. And I'm ready to look. The path to the garden cottage is narrower than I remember. Snow piles softly along its edges undisturbed. My boots crunch against the frozen soil. The air smells faintly of pine and wood smoke from a distant chimney, but around the cottage it's quieter, still like the air is holding its breath. I pause at the door, brushing away the snow clinging to the rusted handle. The wood beneath my palm is warped soft in places. It resists just slightly before groaning open. The hinges moan like they haven't been moved in years. Inside, it's dark and close and cold. The scent hits me. First, damp wood, forgotten fabric, something like time itself folded in a box too long. My breath comes out in a cloud, and I tighten my coat around me. Dust hangs in the air, suspended in the single shaft of light that cuts through a crack in the boarded window. Furniture draped in old sheets looms like ghosts in corners. A wooden table, a bookshelf, a small sofa, half collapsed beneath the weight of age. I step carefully, my footsteps muffled by the thick layer of dust on the floorboards. It doesn't feel like a place someone lived in. Not really, more like somewhere someone visited escaped to. I run my hand along the edge of the table. It leaves a clean streak through the dust. Near the fireplace, something catches the light. A photo frame. I crouch, brushing the grime away from the glass. It's a picture of me and Dad me in my high school graduation gown, him standing beside me on the steps of this very cottage, both of us holding mugs of hot cocoa. He's smiling wide arms around my shoulders. I'd forgotten that moment, but now it returns with clarity. The smell of cocoa, the scratch of his flannel jacket, the way he said, "This place was always yours, you know, just had to grow into it." I blink away the sudden sting behind my eyes. The rug in front of the fireplace is uneven. It dips slightly on one side, as if something beneath it has shifted. I kneel, pulling it back slowly. There set into the floor is a small trapdoor, wooden, with a black iron handle worn down, almost invisible if you didn't know where to look. The key in my coat pocket feels heavier now. I slide it into the lock. It sticks at first, reluctant. Then it clicks with a sound that feels final, like something old is being awakened. The door lifts with effort. Cold air spills out from the darkness below, brushing against my cheeks like a warning and a welcome at once. A narrow staircase leads down into the earth. I hesitate. Then I descend. The basement is small, more like a root cellar. The ceiling is low, the walls paneled in rough wood, and the floor is cold stone. A single bulb dangles from a cord above. Dead. I switch on the flashlight from my phone and sweep the beam across the space. There's a desk against one wall. On it, a metal box, black plain about the size of a shoebox. It glints in the light. On the lid taped in place is a note in my father's handwriting. "Rachel, open when you're ready." I don't realize I'm holding my breath until I sit down. The chair creaks beneath me. My fingers tremble as I lift the lid. Inside is a thick stack of documents bound together with a black clip. Beneath them, a yellow envelope labeled, "Investment account for Rachel only." I open it. There are pages inside account statements, contribution logs, printouts from a brokerage firm. The numbers don't make sense at first. I scan them again. A total value of $524,118.32. I stare at it. Not just savings, not just a forgotten account. This was built brick by brick, year by year. I set the papers down and pull out the second envelope, smaller, thinner. It contains a single sheet of paper. A letter. "Rachel, you've always seen what others miss. You've never asked for anything, which is why I trust you to know what matters. I started this fund years ago because I knew one day you'd need something of your own away from everyone's expectations. The cottage is only part of it. Look closer. Not everything I left behind is obvious. Love, Dad." My throat tightens. I fold the letter gently as if it could tear under the weight of memory. He saw me even when no one else did, even when I had stopped hoping anyone would. It's not the money, it's what it means. All those years when Brooke stood in the light, when the family turned toward her laughter, her crises, her charm, I stood in the shadows in silence, but he had noticed. He had built this for me not just financially, but emotionally. A statement, a safeguard, a message. You are not forgotten. I close the box and rest my hands on the lid, grounding myself. In the silence, I hear the house above creaking, the weight of snow shifting, the wind against the windows. And something else. Stillness. But not the kind that empties. The kind that waits. The kind that has something more to show. I lift the flashlight again and scan the corners of the room. I feel it now. Not just memory, not just grief. A beginning. I don't know what else he left for me, but I'm ready to find it. The next morning, I return to the cottage before the sun finishes rising. The snow crunches louder beneath my boots in the silence. The sky is a dull slate hinting at another storm to come, but the air inside the cottage is still and dry, untouched since the night before. I step in and close the door behind me. My breath floats in the cold room, the dust catching slivers of gray light leaking through the cracks in the window. The photo of me and Dad still sits on the hearth, a quiet witness to what I found beneath the floor. But something lingers, a sense of incompleteness, as though what I've uncovered so far isn't the full message. I step toward the fireplace. Dad used to spend hours here, not just reading or drinking his coffee, but fixing small things, tools in his lap, screws lined up in dishes. Sometimes I'd come in after school to find him sitting cross-legged on the floor, fidgeting with some drawer handle or lamp that didn't need fixing. Once when I asked why he always came out here instead of working inside the main house, he smiled and said, "Some things are meant to stay quiet." I kneel and examine the bricks closely. They're uneven in places worn down by time. As I run my fingers along the back wall of the hearth, I notice something, a faint line running vertically along the mortar, barely visible unless you're looking directly at it. It doesn't match the rest. I tap it lightly. Hollow. There's a small gap at the base, just wide enough to fit the edge of a butter knife or a key. I reach into my coat pocket and pull out the box from the night before. Inside are 2 small keys. One I've already used. The other I haven't tried yet. I slip it into the gap and gently press. There's a soft click like an old mechanism stirring to life. Then the panel swings open. Behind the wall is a narrow room, maybe 6 feet deep and 4 feet across. No windows, no lights, just dry air and shadows. I step inside and aim my flashlight across the floor. In the far corner is a safe. Tall, heavy, dusty, painted a dark green so faded it almost looks black. My breath catches. I remember this safe. It used to sit in Dad's old office before he converted the room into storage. When I was little, I'd spin the combination dial just to hear it click. He always told me it held grown-up things and would smile when I asked what that meant. He never opened it in front of me, not once. But he never threw it out either. Now it's here, hidden waiting. I kneel and press my hand to the door. The metal is cold, solid. The keyhole is small but familiar. I pull the second key from the envelope, slide it into the lock, and turn. A click, then a deep, low groan as the door creaks open. Inside are rows of small, velvet-lined boxes stacked neatly. Each one is labeled in Dad's handwriting. Some have years written next to them. Others have names of cities. I know he visited long ago. Chicago, Montreal, Tokyo. I pick up the first box. Inside is a gold pocket watch delicately engraved with a floral pattern and an old monogram I don't recognize. The next box holds a vintage Rolex, heavy and immaculate with the year 1964 etched into the back. Another contains a silver Patek Philippe with a worn leather band and a deep blue face that gleams beneath the dust. I sit back slowly, surrounded by the quiet weight of time. Each watch is pristine, perfectly preserved, resting like a memory waiting to be remembered. I find an envelope tucked in the back. It contains appraisals documents from a certified expert in Boston letters on official letterhead with details and valuations. The numbers stagger me. The collection's estimated worth is just over $480,000. I close my eyes. He never said a word. All those years of silence through illness, through birthdays passed over without fanfare, through Brooke's loudness and my stillness. He had been planning this, not as a surprise, but as a form of protection, as if he knew I'd never ask, that I'd never expect anything. So he gave me what no one else could take, quiet, lasting security. But it's not just the money. Each box is a message. A way of saying I saw you, I remembered, I prepared. I run my hand across the inside of the safe, tracing the edges. I pull out one more box, smaller than the others. Inside is the same gold pocket watch I remember him wearing every Thanksgiving. He used to tap it against his palm as he told stories at the dinner table. And now it's here, waiting. I tuck it into my coat pocket. I don't know what I'm going to do with the others yet. I don't know if I'll keep them, sell them, lock them away again. But I know I will treat them the way he meant them to be treated, with reverence. This isn't a windfall. It's a final conversation. I sit there in the cold for a long time, surrounded by velvet and brass and the smell of time. Eventually I stand. I close the safe not to hide it, but to honor it. The room behind the fireplace closes just as quietly as it opened. And the cottage, still dark, still waiting, feels different now. Not empty. Not forgotten. Held. The knock comes just after sunset. I'm in the kitchen washing dishes by hand, like I always do. The window over the sink fogged from the warmth inside, meeting the sharp cold outside. The knock is firm twice, no hesitation. I dry my hands slowly and walk to the front door. Brooke stands there wrapped in a black coat, hair swept up like she's on her way to a dinner party. Her heels sink slightly into the damp patch of ground near the porch, and her eyes are sharp. Too sharp, like she's trying to see through me instead of at me. "I figured you'd still be up," she says, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. Her perfume trails behind her, sharp and citrusy, clashing with the scent of wood smoke that's been sitting in the walls since November. I close the door quietly. Brooke walks into the living room like it's hers. She doesn't sit, just stands near the mantel, glancing around, eyes restless. "You sent a gift to Mr. Beckman," she says flatly. "The pharmacist, and a card to Nurse Eileen. Aunt Karen said you gave her a grocery gift card. Even Tom next door got something." I stay still and, And she says, turning toward me, "How are you affording that, Rachel?" "You work part-time. You've always been simple." The way she says it's simple, it doesn't sound kind. I lift my chin. It wasn't much, just thank yous. Brooke crosses her arms. "You didn't have to thank them. Dad's gone. That part's over." "That part," I echo. She doesn't answer. I walk past her and sit down on the arm of the couch. I don't invite her to sit. I don't offer tea. She studies me for a long moment. "You're hiding something," she says. "You think I don't notice, but you've been different, calm, like you're holding something back." "I'm tired," I say. "No," she snaps, "you're smug." I breathe in slowly, counting to 3. "You got the house. The accounts. What more do you want?" "I want to know what's in that shed." "It's not a shed." She laughs, bitter and sharp. "It was a shed until you decided to move in like some heir to a mystery novel." I say nothing. She walks to the doorway, pulling her coat tighter. "If you're hiding something, I'll find out. Don't think for a second you're the only one Dad cared about." I watch her leave without another word. The wind clutches at the door as it swings shut. That night I don't sleep. Something in her voice stays with me. Something brittle, almost wild. A hint of desperation beneath the pride. By morning, the sky is gray again. A storm is coming. I'm in the middle of folding laundry when the phone rings. It's Mom. Her voice is trembling. "Rachel, can you come?" "Now it's Brooke. She broke into the house last night." I dropped the laundry what? "I heard noises in the basement. At first I thought it was the wind. Then I heard something crash and footsteps running upstairs. When I went down, boxes were opened. She was looking for something. I called her name, but she didn't answer. Then she just left." I grab my keys. When I get to the house, the front door is cracked open. Mom stands just inside, holding a mug in both hands like it's the only thing keeping her upright. She didn't take anything, she says, but I think she was trying to get into the safe. I go downstairs. The basement smells like dust and cardboard. Some of the storage bins are toppled. Their contents, spilled old Christmas decorations, school yearbooks, a broken lamp. The safe is untouched, still locked, but there's a muddy footprint near the corner. A heel mark. "Brooks." I stare at it for a long time. That evening, I get another call. This time it's the hospital. Brooke is in the emergency room. She fell. The nurse explains. Her right leg is fractured. Some bruising along her ribs and shoulder. They said she was trying to move something heavy and lost her balance. I drive there without thinking. The emergency room is quiet unusually, so a storm has started outside. The snow is coming down thick and wet, clinging to the windows like icing. I find her in bed, propped up by 2 pillows. Her hair is loose, her eyeliner smudged. There's a hospital band on her wrist and a plastic pitcher of water on the tray beside her. She doesn't look up when I enter. "You didn't have to come," she says. "I know." She turns to the window. Her voice is low. "It was the safe, wasn't it?" I sit in the chair next to her, my coat still damp. "What were you hoping to find?" She doesn't answer. Instead, she closes her eyes. "He gave you something. I know it. You've changed. You walk around like you've got a secret." "I don't owe you anything," I say gently. Not an explanation. Not anything. Her voice cracks, then barely audible. "I was his daughter too." I nod. "You were." "I was just trying to get what I deserved." "And what did you think that was?" I ask another house. "More money." She presses her lips together, says nothing. There's a silence between us so thick it almost hums. Eventually, I stand. I tuck the hospital blanket tighter around her shoulders. "You need to rest." She turns her head away. On the tray beside her is a folder. I recognize the legal firm's seal stamped on the front. Divorce papers. She's losing more than just the illusion of control. I walk out without looking back. And in that moment, I realize something I hadn't before. She didn't fall because she was clumsy. She fell because she refused to believe there was a world where she wasn't entitled to everything. And in chasing what wasn't hers, she lost what little she had left. It's been 3 weeks since the hospital. Snow has started to melt along the edges of the porch, revealing patches of brown earth and brittle leaves that never made it to the rake. The light outside has shifted to longer in the evenings, softer around the edges. I've started opening windows again, letting in the chill to air out the house. The scent of wood smoke is finally fading. I'm back at the library a few mornings a week, helping reorganize the archives. It feels good to handle quiet things again, things that don't ask anything of me. I haven't heard from Brooke since the night I left the hospital. Not a message, not a call. Until today. She doesn't text first, she doesn't knock. I'm in the garden cutting back the dormant rose bushes near the fence when I see her standing on the sidewalk. She's holding a cardboard box, plain taped at the sides like something you'd find in a moving truck or an attic. Her coat is old too big in the sleeves and her hair is pulled into a low bun. There's no makeup, no pretense. She waits not moving until I walk to the gate. I found these in a bag I never unpacked. She says, her voice is quiet. I thought they were bills or maybe old insurance stuff, but they're Dad's. I reach out and take the box. It's lighter than I expect. Okay, I say. She doesn't ask to come in, doesn't linger, just nods and walks back to her car, parked crooked along the curb. I watch her go. The tires crunch over old gravel as she pulls away. Inside, I place the box on the kitchen table. There's no smell to it, but the paper inside is old-faded. There are letters in Dad's handwriting receipts from business trips, some sketches of building plans he never followed through on tucked between them, is a small cream envelope with my name written in pencil. Rachel. No date, no return address. Just my name. I slide my finger beneath the flap and open it carefully as if it might tear from too much pressure. The letter is short, not even a full page. Rachel. By the time you read this, I'm gone. I thought about saying more, writing more, but I figured you'd already understand what I couldn't put into words. I left you the cottage because it always belonged to you. You were the only one who ever saw it as more than a tool shed or a leftover space. You saw it as something quiet and worth saving, just like you always saw me that way too. I knew you'd stay, not because you were stuck, but because you cared, and I didn't want that to leave you with nothing. Everything I set aside for you because I trusted you. Not to spend it wisely or to impress anyone, but to hold it with care, like you held the rest of us. Love, Dad. I read it twice before I realize I've stopped breathing. Then I sit down slowly, letting the paper rest between my hands. The words don't shout. They don't try to fix what was broken between us or between me and Brooke, but they don't need to. They see me completely quietly fully. I think back to the last time I saw him in the garden, bent low over the soil, even though his hands shook, he'd looked up and said, "Don't forget the smallest spaces can hold the most life." At the time, I thought he meant the seedlings, the cucumbers maybe, or the tomatoes we never got around to planting that spring. But now I understand. He meant the shed. He meant this letter. He meant me. I fold the paper gently and tuck it back into its envelope. I don't cry. Not because I'm not moved, but because the sadness feels softer now, like something that no longer aches, just sits beside you, quietly reminding you that you survived. I keep the letter in the drawer by the front door next to the spare keys and utility bills. Not hidden, not displayed. Just close. Later that evening, I walk back outside. The snow has almost melted from the porch rail. The sky is streaked with gold and soft gray. I think about Brooke, about how she handed the box to me without a word of apology or a demand for explanation. It wasn't redemption, but maybe it was something close to understanding. She's unraveling, but maybe unraveling is the only way you can knit something new. As for me, I feel something else. Not triumph, not relief. Just peace. I look out toward the garden cottage. The door is still shut. The windows catch the last of the light. I don't know what will happen next. I don't know if Brooke will come back or if we'll speak again anytime soon, but I know now that I have everything I need to move forward. Not because of what I was given, but because of what was affirmed. I was seen, and I was trusted. That's more than inheritance, that's legacy. And it's enough. The first crocuses arrive at the edge of the yard like a quiet promise. tiny purple-tipped blooms pushing through the softening ground as if they've decided winter has taken enough already. I kneel beside them in the soil, still cool beneath my hands, and plant the first row of peas along the fence line. Spring has come early this year. The porch is swept clean. The shutters on the main house are newly painted. Inside, I've cleared the guest room so Mom can move in next month. She says she doesn't want to be a burden, but I tell her the truth. I want her here. I want the rooms filled again, not with noise, but with warmth, with steadiness, with stories passed in quiet moments over tea. Some evenings, I walk through the house touching the walls the way someone touches a photo frame lightly with memory. I dust the old bookshelf oil, the hinges on the bedroom doors. I hang the curtains. She likes the ones with the small flowers at the hem. In what used to be the study, I've started a nursery. The bassinet sits near the window facing the hills. I haven't bought much yet, but there's a mobile of tiny birds above the crib and a shelf for books I already love. I found out about the baby not long after Brooke brought the box of letters. At first, I thought the nausea was just nerves or grief, the kind that comes and goes like a tide you learn to stand against. But when the line on the test turned pink, everything inside me stilled. It wasn't fear, it wasn't even surprise. It was clarity. A new life rooted in old soil. I haven't told Brooke. Not yet. I'm not sure I need to. She's living in a rental now on the other side of town, above a hardware store. She works part-time and doesn't call much, though. Mom says she stops by sometimes bringing small things, soup books, a plant with too many leaves. She's trying in her own quiet way. I don't feel angry when I think of her now. Just distant. Like the sharp edge between us has dulled with time. Some days I still visit the cottage. I sit on the porch steps with a blanket over my knees, watching the wind move through the birch trees. The safe remains closed, but I've kept 3 of the watches. The rest have been sold, appraised, and handled carefully with the help of someone who knew what to do. The gold pocket watch, the one Dad always wore on holidays, sits on a small wooden stand in my bedroom. It ticks softly steady as a heartbeat, as if it's keeping time. Not for me, but with me. I keep thinking about his letter. Everything I set aside for you, because I trusted you. He never said he loved me with loud words or dramatic gestures. He didn't write long notes or leave instructions meant to impress. He left things meant to protect. And that I've come to understand was his way of saying everything. I don't miss the money. I don't even think about the house Brooke inherited. What he gave me isn't something that can be measured in property lines or bank balances. He gave me room to grow. And I've started a seedling tray in the kitchen window. Tiny green shoots lean toward the light each morning. I water them gently, the same way he taught me, and whisper to them sometimes without thinking. The garden will be smaller this year, but it will be enough. There is peace in that word. Enough. The days are longer now. I wake to the sound of birds instead of the wind pressing at the windows. The silence in the house feels different, not empty, but expectant. One afternoon, I find myself sorting through a drawer I haven't opened in years. Inside is an old pair of gardening gloves, still holding the shape of Dad's hands. I press them flat and place them beside the door. I think I'll wear them this spring. Later that evening, I stand at the edge of the nursery and rest my hand on the curve of my belly. This child won't know my father, not in person, but they will know him in other ways, in the rows of carrots we plant in the stories I read aloud from worn books in the pocket watch that keeps ticking beside their crib. In the way we build a life together that is quiet, honest, and rooted in care. I believe in those things now, not because they're grand or flashy, but because they last. Just like he did. As the last light fades, I step outside and sit on the porch. The sky is pink and lavender, brushed with the soft colors of a day well spent. I breathe it in the scent of earth waking up. And I remember something he once said long before the illness. The best things, Rachel, don't need to announce themselves. They just grow. And now so will I. Rachel's story is a quiet reminder that strength does not always speak loudly. Sometimes it waits in silence in the forgotten corners, in the hands that give without asking. She was the daughter no one celebrated, the one overlooked, expected to endure. And yet, through her patience and care, she became the one trusted with a legacy no one else could hold. What began as an insult, a forgotten cottage became a symbol of resilience, love, and quiet preparation. Her journey speaks to anyone who has ever been underestimated or left behind. It tells us that self-worth does not come from attention, but from the choices we make when no one is watching. If Rachel's story moved, you share your thoughts below. We'd love to hear what stayed with you. And if you believe in stories that honor quiet strength, consider subscribing for more. Your voice matters here.